Hi, Danville. Alan Chills here, Chief of Police for the town, and we are 10-8 and in service to all of you, which means we're here to make people's lives better. And we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. I will have a robbery update for you, but it's not our most recent string. It's actually one that occurred last year in or near our downtown area. I also have some announcements to make. We'll go over the blotter, and then I want to talk about crosswalk safety and see if we can't work towards being a little bit safer as we go through this. But first off, this is a live show, so if you have questions, throw them right in the chat here, and we will see what we can do about answering them live during the show. First off, Danville Citizens Academy is starting next month. Go ahead and throw your application in today. There's a link down in the description, and just drop it off or email it in, and we'll get you signed up for the class. It's a good way to find out everything it is that we do. You'll get introduced to a lot of the people that work here, and frankly, it's a good way for us to get feedback on what we can do better. The local roadway safety plan is still open. You can drop a pin or define an area that you would like to recommend for traffic safety improvements. And then we've got 2 guides. We've been really pushing them. And I think with some of the fires that we've seen lately, I think these are good guides. And I really want to encourage people to download those. The first one is the FEMA all hazards checklist. Up here, I've got be prepared for a power outage, which we just posted about 2 hours ago, and what you can do to be prepared. It would be horrible to lose a whole fridge of food because the power goes out for an extended period of time. What you can do to prepare for that event, what you can do to survive during it, and then how you can work after that event takes place. And then this is kind of 2 shots in one, but this is go to our sheriff's website for community warning system alerts and log in and opt in so that you can receive alerts via your phone and your email or however you'd like to get them. And we will send you alerts should we do a major sort of shutdown or anything like that. If there's a natural disaster, if we need you to shelter in place or evacuate, that is a system we're going to use in addition to Nixle. Also on that page is the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide. This is a good guide, similar to the All Hazards Guide, but very specific to wildfire hazards. It's got a lot of things you can do to prepare your house and be ready should an emergency take place. All right, I'm going to check the chat real quick. No questions, but some good comments. Appreciate those. So let's look at crime for the week. So communitycrimemap.com, this is where you can go anytime, day or night, and see the crime that's been happening in town. Just be aware that format has changed a little bit, and if you need help, we can help you with that. August 15 through 21. This was a very good week as far as being very low on crime. No violent crime, and we only had one Part 1 theft, or Part 1 property crime, which was a burglary, and that was a commercial burglary, so that was of a business, 3400 block of Crow Canyon Road, where construction tools and materials were taken. Now, I get it. I know that there may have been some shopliftings that were not reported, and someone may have had a bike stolen that may not have been reported. This is simply what is reported to us. We know that all crimes to varying degrees are underreported, but this is what we received last week by way of report. For traffic, we had 1 injury collision, 1 property collision, and 2 hit and runs. One of the hit and runs was on Greenbrook near Camino Ramon on the 15th. On the 16th, we had a solo vehicle accident with injuries on Communitas and Sycamore Valley Road. That's the one that took out the traffic signal controller. And frankly, kudos to our transportation manager, Andy Dillard, because when we get an accident like that, I call him right away and I'm like, hey, this is the issue. And he gets signal maintenance out there from the county, and they got that thing up and running to at least cycle through the red lights very quickly, and then continued, and were able to redo that whole controller within a week, which is outstanding. I mean, that is very, very fast service. On the 17th, there was another hit and run on Prospect and Hearts. And then on the 19th, there was a non-injury collision on Communitas, Sahara, and Jasmine Way. So out east there, that's the green one out east. So that is our crime and traffic. So I kind of leaked the intro there, but I do want to give an update on one case that happened last year, and it actually goes on the Hill. Let me put this one up first. A couple weeks ago, I talked about how we release information, specifically when a crime has just occurred. And I talked about the 3 phases of that. In the middle one not being a phase where information is released, but the first one being the initial report, what happened, any call to action, community warning, those sort of things. This is where we may ask for help in generating leads. The middle part, sometimes it can be as quick as a day, and other times it can take months. But this is the investigation part, and this is where we ask for a generous amount of patience while the investigators and detectives work with local agencies and through some technical issues to try to make sure that we investigate the case thoroughly. And then once the investigation is complete and we close the case, that is when we would release any final details to the public. But again, even in that final phase, we still don't play out our probable cause. We don't try our case in the public sphere. That's what court is for. We have to be very careful not to do that. But I do want to say that we did have a pretty good case, and it shows the efforts on our detectives' part. Back on October 16th, 2021, so towards the end of last year, we had three teens, three juvenile females that were robbed at gunpoint on San Ramon or Danville Boulevard near the Trader Joe's. When the victims were robbed, they saw the person flee towards the back of Trader Joe's. We had a vague description, and then we had the vehicle description to work on. The detective kept the case open and continued to work it week by week by week. And finally, in December of the same year, so December of 2021, they were able to put together enough information to have a suspect identified, and to have that suspect identified in such a way that they were able to get the district attorney to file 3 counts of robbery against the suspect, and that's one for each victim. So it may have been one event, but it's 3 counts of robbery because he robbed each one of those victims. So it was a good case, and I think what it shows is that oftentimes it'll take a long time for our detectives to investigate a case. Sometimes we're good and we can get the information we need up front and early, and other times it just takes being persistent. And we've got a good group of detectives down here that are very, very persistent. They do excellent work, and they lead to a higher than average solve rate when compared to certainly the national average. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there's any more. Gary says, thank you again for getting your speed sign up and running on Communitas and Rossani. So what Gary is talking about is we purchased 4 new speed signs. Typically what you'll see is a sign with a pole in the road, and you'll see a solar panel and a big battery pack, and then you'll see the sign. And those are the permanent ones that we put in. And what we had used before to do spot checks, where we'd use these trailers, the disadvantage of the trailers is you can't park a trailer everywhere safely. And so what we decided to do is go with these temporary ones that are smaller and portable. And what we're doing is we're working through the implementation phase now, where we're learning how long do the batteries last on Camino Tasajara versus maybe Greenbrook Drive. And so we're working on getting that timing down. So Gary did a good job, and he sent me an email and said, hey, your sign's out, go fix it. And so we sent someone out to go fix it. All right, I want to see what else is going on. It looks like Joanne. I was in Walnut Creek the other day and trying to cross in the crosswalk, and 20 or so cars went by without stopping. We should remind people to stop for walkers and only cross when safe. Seen many issues in town super fast on Diablo. Joanne, that is exactly what we're going to cover tonight. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for providing that feedback. And Laurel says she feels her pain in reference to Joanne's statement about the crosswalk. All right, so we are going to talk about crosswalks. It is a big deal in town. That is our final thought for tonight. That is what we're going to talk about. And I think it's helpful to understand like what our obligations are, and then also what we could do to make things safer. And I'll lead with this. I think for the most part, people in town do an excellent job. And what I see a lot is I see as cars come up, like on the Iron Horse Trail, as cars come up, they'll slow down, they'll look, and they don't have an obligation to slow down, right? The roadway is theirs. The obligation is on a pedestrian not to jet out in front of people. But I'll still see that when they come across a dangerous situation, drivers will attempt to identify it and slow down and see what they can do to fix it. But what I do want to do is I want to show a quick video. And I've shown it before, but I want to show this video real quick. And this is of an incident that happened on the Iron Horse Trail. Sorry, so in this video, you can see how quickly the cyclist comes out. And let me play it back a little bit here, see if I can get it to play back. Play that one again. All right, so if you can see, this is the view from both the inside of the cab on the right and the outside, so what the driver actually sees on the left. So what you can see is that the driver's coming up on the Iron Horse Trail at Love Lane. There's going to be a cyclist that comes from the right. And in the shadows and everything else, the cyclist or the pedestrian has an obligation to stop and look before they cross. Now look, so the cyclist made no attempt to stop and ended up being hit by the car. Ultimately, that cyclist is the one that is found at fault in those types of collisions. Pedestrian, if they jet out in front and they don't stop and look, that's going to be on them. Once the pedestrian or the cyclist is in the crosswalk, then it is the car's obligation to stop. And I do have a good video. I do put a link in the description here so that if you want to check the video out later, but it is a good video on, sorry, I'm going to have to pull it up here. There we go. It's a good video on kind of the do's and don'ts with traffic safety. And if you wanted to play this for your kids, I would encourage you, please pass this particular video on to your kids. It's actually filmed in New Zealand, or let me say animated in New Zealand. So you're going to see cars driving on the wrong side of the road, but the principles behind what you should do when approaching a crosswalk, when you're both a pedestrian and a motorist, are exactly the same. And it's a good one. For the fair use side of it, this is for educational purposes, and this is not a, we don't monetize any of these channels. So this is for education purposes only. So let's play this video.
Hello. All drivers and riders should know the road rules, and pedestrians need to know their rules too.
A pedestrian is a person who is walking. Here's a super way to learn how to be a safe pedestrian.
Whenever you cross the road, choose the safest place, and then remember, there are 4 things you must always do.
Stop. Look. Listen. And think.
Let's go over that again. Stop walking at least 1 step before the edge of the curb. Look right, look left, look right again, turning your head as you look. A child's eyesight isn't as good as an adult's, so children will have to turn their heads fully to be able to see if it's safe to cross the road. It is important for young children to hold an adult's hand.
Always listen for any traffic and think about whether it is safe to walk across the road. Never run. The safest place to cross the road is at a crossing. There are 3 main types of crossings. The first is a children's crossing. You will find this crossing outside a school. A children's crossing sometimes has a monitor who uses a sign to tell pedestrians and traffic when to stop and when to go. What do the children do before they cross?
The next type of crossing is a pedestrian light crossing. When the pedestrian light is red, you must wait. When the light turns green, you may cross the road after you stop, look, listen and think. When the green light starts flashing red, you may continue to cross the road only if you have already started crossing. If you haven't started crossing yet, you must wait until the light is green again.
The third type of crossing is a street or road crossing. Whether it's a busy road in the city or a quiet road in the bush, the same rules apply. Stop, look, listen and think.
Of course, you might see other types of crossings. Some roads have a traffic island that sits in the middle of the road. Before you cross to the traffic island, remember to stop, look, listen and think. And before you step off the island, you must stop, look, listen and think again before you start to walk.
You might also see a zebra crossing. You'll know it when you see a zebra crossing by the white stripes painted on the road.
So remember, whenever you are crossing any type of road, look for the safest place to cross and remember to do what? Stop, look, listen and think.
So I actually looked because we were planning on making a video and seeing what we could do. And I found that one, and it was probably as good of one as I've seen, especially for kids. We're going back to school, lots of kids on the Iron Horse Trail, going to and from school. And what I see all the time is I see people and when they're either on their bikes or they've maybe pushing a stroller or they're just walking or jogging, is they will run out into the roadway and they give no time for the car to slow down. And so even though drivers are obligated to stop once you're in the crosswalk. Just remember that we, as pedestrians, have an obligation not to jet out in front of them. And so what I'll do is I'm going to go to the chat here in a minute, but I want to cover a couple of things real quick on the safety tips. So what do we expect our drivers to do? First off, you can minimize the risk between getting into an accident if you simply don't speed, never drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs, look out for pedestrians and cyclists. When the conditions are poor, so in other words, when the fog is rolling in or maybe it's raining a lot, and I'll tell you the one that we get that's most common is actually the sun in our eyes. And so when the conditions are such that you can't see or you can't see that well, you need to take appropriate action. And if you can't see at all, you just shouldn't be driving, right? So if it's super dense fog, that's not a time to drive. You have to be able to see far enough to react to and stop in a hazard. And so once the pedestrian is in the crosswalk, they have the right of way. Here's one I see a lot where, and I'll see this one on a lot of times I'll see it on Linda Mesa and Harts. One person will stop like in the left turn pocket, and they will be waiting for someone to pass. And while they're waiting for that pedestrian to go by, someone in the straight lane, not seeing the pedestrian because they're hidden by the car, just continues to go. And so we should just be aware that if we're approaching an intersection and other cars seem to be stopped, that's an opportunity for us to slow down and look as drivers and make sure that we're really paying attention to what's going on. So safety tips for pedestrians: make yourself visible. We actually pass these out to some of our students. We'll pass out little lights that they can put on. There's a lady that runs by my house all the time. My wife and I see her coming back from the gym in the morning. She actually wears one of those nice lighted vests, and you can't miss her. We see her, we'll be a good quarter to a half a mile away, and we can see her blinking. There's no way we're going to miss this person. And don't be fooled, because the myth is if I wear a yellow shirt or a white shirt that I'll be visible at night. Not true. Still really, really hard to see someone at night. I think that cyclist video is a good example. That was during the daytime, and that person was simply in the shadows, and they were wearing a lighter colored jersey. Still very hard to see. If there's a flashing light on that bike that maybe flashes to the side, front and back, you're going to be more visible. So we recommend doing that at night. Walk on the sidewalks. I know this sounds silly, but stay sober. If you're walking and stumbling, that's a recipe for disaster. And then make eye contact with the driver and not the car. We see this a lot where people will see a car slowing down. They'll see the car, but they don't actually see the driver. And what we recommend is make sure you make eye contact with the driver and then proceed into the intersection in the crosswalk. Pay attention. We see this all the time where people are walking with their phones. They're not paying attention one way or the other. And then look before you cross. The other one, obey signs and signals. We see this one a lot on the Iron Horse Trail at San Ramon Valley Boulevard. People do everything else. They come up to the intersection, they look both ways, and then they run, and there's a red signal. And just like the video said, if there is a red stop, you're not supposed to go. If it's a green walk, you can enter the intersection, and as it's blinking red, you can continue to walk, but you're not supposed to enter the intersection if it's either a blinking red or a red for the pedestrian. So really be careful, really follow those signals, and make sure that we're doing good there. All right, I'm going to go to the chat real quick. Speed sign, I thought there was one about, okay, so Gary, you said, can you speak to the armed robbery blitz that several departments participated in? Can you be a little more specific? Okay, they had Oakland, Antioch, and others involved and arrested 2 in Oakland, and they recovered 1 watch. It was on TV and in the print. Okay, so Gary, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Other agencies have already released the information. I may know something because we do coordinate regionally, but if it is not my case, it's not appropriate for me to release information. And the 2 big reasons is, one, I may release the wrong information and harm the investigation, so I may actually be destructive when I release the information. And then 2, I may release bad information that's just false or wrong because I'm not at the center of that investigation. And then Joanne says, forgot to ask, has there been a study on how many cars go through walk signal by Panda Express? Saw another car yesterday, clueless on the signal. Thankful no one was actually crossing. How about this, Joanne? What I'll do is we've got some police assistants, and that sounds like a great project for them. We are looking at doing crosswalk enforcement. Frankly, we were looking at more in the downtown, kind of Harts Prospect, Harts Linda Mesa area, but maybe that's a good one as well. Tell me what times that you see them specifically. I'm curious if you're looking at more the AM or the PM kind of dinner time area. And what we can do is we can work on seeing if we can get that, and we can do a quick couple hour checkbox before. We can do some enforcement, and then we can do a checkbox afterwards to see if the enforcement was any good. Point to the driver. So Gary brings up a good point. I talk about when you're crossing a road and you're either a pedestrian or a bike, I say look for the person, like see if you can make eye contact with them. I always call it the wave wars. The cyclist will wave, the driver will wave. That's a sure acknowledgement that two people see one another, either by pointing or waving, but anything that can make it so that it's safer for you. And in the bottom line with all of these is if you are walking or riding your bike and you get hit in that intersection, regardless of who's at fault, you're the one that's going to get hurt really, really bad, potentially. So I would say, even though the law may see fault one way or the other or partially on both, as a pedestrian or cyclist, that's a losing battle for us. So I would say use additional care and caution. All right. So that looks like it's all I have for the chat. That was my final thought. And I just want to run through real quick. If you want to see what we do, sign up. We've got spots still available. Link in the description. Sign up for a fall academy. And we've got the local roadway safety plan. If you have an intersection that you want to see traffic and safety improvements on, this is your chance to input and say, this is where I think you ought to make improvements and this is what you ought to do. Download the FEMA All Hazards Checklist. There's a link in the description. Print it out, throw it in a drawer, and this will help you be prepared. So when we keep rolling with these power outages, you'll have an idea of how to make sure your fridge doesn't go bad with food. How do you know about this stuff? Go to Community Warning Systems, sign up, opt in. If there's a major disaster, that is what we're going to use to notify everybody. And then there's also a wildlife preparedness and evacuation guide there. I noticed there's a couple more things in the chat here. I just want to check and make sure. Gary says, Camino Taos westbound at Iron Horse, as cars approach 680, they will go into the crosswalk. Okay. And then have you noticed northbound Ceremony Valley Boulevard at Harts, a lot of people go straight from the right turn only lane. Then they have nowhere to go. I even saw a CC sheriff do it the other day, maybe a sign. So Boulevard coming up on Hart. So that's the kind of where the oak tree is by Crumbs, right? Okay, so I'll note that. And those two, Gary and Dean, I'm going to pass those both on to our transportation manager. And then a sign on the red light. So, okay, so you're saying like right turn only, left, straight only. Okay. All right, perfect. So I got that. I appreciate the feedback and thanks for joining us. What helps us keep this program going is if you pass it on to somebody else. We've got good numbers. If we're in the 30s, I think we're doing pretty good. So let's keep that. And we get a lot of people watching after the show. So if you can just forward this to somebody, hit the like, the subscribe, do all of that sort of stuff that keeps all of this going. We'd appreciate it. So thanks for the feedback. We're 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:8 in service to all of you. Thanks. Have a good night.